Hello, my name is Kareem Khalifa. I'm the Senior Visiting Fellow at the Center for Philosophy of Science this year. I'm currently a professor at UCLA, but I will be joining Pittsburgh's History and Philosophy of Science department starting in the fall of 2027. While I'm here this year, I'll be working on a book-length project tentatively titled Race in the Social Sciences. I'm basically trying to answer two big questions. The first is, do races exist? And second, if they exist, what exactly are they? And I'm using empirically successful social science as my guide. A lot of it is really sort of thinking about what that actually means to have the social sciences guide you in questions about what we might call the metaphysics of race. Essentially, what I'll be doing is deploying what I call social scientific arguments, and they have three core ingredients, what I'll call job descriptions for race representations, success to accuracy claims, and finally, interpreting race representations. And I'll just talk you through each of those things. So the first thing we want to do is we want to get an accurate description of how certain kinds of representations of race function in the social sciences. Those are the job descriptions. And I'll be focusing chiefly on three kinds of representations of race as we find them in the social sciences. First, in measurement, second, in explanations, chiefly causal models, and third, in theories. So what we'll do is we'll sort of characterize the various roles that they play in these different domains. Of course, simply characterizing a job description for a representation doesn't ensure that it's accurate, and that's where the second step, success to accuracy claims, comes in. So what I'll do here is triangulate between broader discussions in the philosophy of science about scientific realism and sort of methodological reflections from social scientists to try and figure out criteria by which we can say, well, this kind of race representation is contributing to a certain kind of empirical success. And on the basis of that, we can feel confident that that race representation is accurate. So just to give you a flavor for this, if we found out that race representations of various kinds all converged on the same sorts of classifications of people's races, that would be the kind of thing that might give us some license for optimism that some of our race measures are accurate. Of course, once you have an accurate representation, it ends up being a rather thorny question about how you interpret that representation. What exactly is it telling us about the world? And here I tend to think that both social scientists, particularly more theoretically inclined social scientists, as well as most philosophers, tend to be overly speculative. And so what I'll be counseling is what I call humble interpretations of race representations. What I mean by a humble interpretation is something along the following lines, right? It basically has sort of three criteria, right? First, we try to keep the interpretations of the representations relatively literal, right? We don't try to imbue more meaning into the representations than what they actually say. Second, we make sure that we focus on just those parts of the representations that seem directly responsible for the significant empirical successes that we identified in that second step, the success to accuracy claims. And this sort of allows us to be somewhat discerning about what's actually doing the work and what we should actually feel confident is accurate, and what we might draw our lessons about both the nature and existence of race from. And then finally, what we want to do is achieve some kind of wide reflective equilibrium or coherence with the broader swath of empirically successful social science. That's one way we may adjudicate between representations that sort of do well with respect to their literalness and hemming close to the top shelf empirical successes. So if all goes well, I'll have interesting things to say to philosophers of science, really where we can start to think about issues about scientific realism that have largely been deployed in the context of the natural sciences, and now we can see that there's some continuity with the social sciences. I also hope to have lots of things to say to philosophers of non-science, as I like to call them, who work on the metaphysics of race. So this will tell us something interesting about whether anti-realism about race is true, or whether biological realism about race is true, or social constructionism about race is true. Right now, given the kinds of interpretive scruples that I've laid out to you, I think what you're going to end up with is a kind of realism that's rather deflationary, but I'm still developing those arguments. And last but certainly not least, I want to be talking to social scientists, both of a more empirical and methodological slant, as well as of a more theoretical slant, to sort of indicate where I think there are useful philosophical interventions to be going on. Thanks.